Christ who calls us. Amen. Let's be seated. So this has been a tough week. I think we are all, once again, in reeling confusion over the terrible destruction and slaughter at Umpqua College in Roseburg. It's interesting to me that today is appointed the story of Job, which is a meditation on the randomness of evil, where Job is presented to us as the last person on earth who has anything bad coming to him, and yet absolutely everything bad comes to him short of his own death. The little passage, the collapsed passage we read today, does not mention the fact that his children are all killed as well. And we have this man who, in the midst of all of this calamity and horror, makes a choice. An odd choice perhaps, but it is the choice that he makes, and that is to neither blame himself, as in I'm a sinner and I had this coming, trying to make sense of things by finding a convenient thing to blame, nor does he despair. So he neither makes cheap meaning out of the situation, nor does he accept his wife's invitation to curse God and die. Which, you know, on the surface of things isn't an unreasonable thing to do. And I suppose this is kind of where we are, sitting in our own ash heap now, feeling that great pain and the shock and the great senselessness of such a calamity. But as God's people, nevertheless, choosing to gather in this place and give thanks to the Creator of all that is good, and to grieve, and perhaps to pray. So before I continue, I'd like to offer you that opportunity for us together to have a moment of silence in memory of those killed and wounded and those grieving as a result of this shooting. Holy One, we offer our hearts and our lives to you. Make us instruments of your peace. Amen. Amen. Which brings me back to Francis. Francis is a charming and attractive saint. There are many darling books and beautiful, stunning artistic representations of Francis. I don't know if you're at all familiar with those gorgeous Giotto paintings, but they're very inspiring. There's lots of beautiful art and cute bird bath statues of Francis. And so on one level, he's easy to approach. I don't know if you saw the wonderful movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, but he's kind of a beautiful hippie child in that movie, you know, singing and dancing and consorting with the birds. And we have these lovely stories about taming the wolf and all of that, which makes Francis so endearing to us. And just on the other side of that, if you pay even a little more attention to what he actually said and what he actually did and how he actually lived, we have we confront a different Francis, maybe not a different Francis, but a more challenging Francis. The actual saint. And like any saint, he's a little harder to approach. Here is the man who strips his clothes off before his father and says, I don't need this. You don't want me to be your son? That's fine with me. Here, take your stuff. He does that in public. Here's the guy that refuses any possessions and says, any of you wants to hang out with me, you can't own the place you live in. You can't even collect food for tomorrow. You can beg for your food today, but not for tomorrow. I mean, this guy is intense. And we look at that and we think, how can we even begin to imagine living such a life? How can we imagine following such a person? He seems so austere and so extreme, and we feel, I don't know about we, I feel very worldly and very intimidated by such a role model. I mean, it's all fine when he's praising Brother Sun and Sister Moon, but when he's going into this poverty thing and hugging lepers, that's a little tougher. That's a little tougher for me. And so I was reflecting on how do we come close to someone like Francis, and I realized that for me he's kind of another way of asking the question, how do we get close to Jesus? Because Jesus isn't any easier. I mean, we're more used to Jesus because we say his name all the time, and we have these worship services and all these beautiful hymns and everything all kind of built up around it. But Jesus is at least as tough. I mean, did you hear that reading today? I happen to be a divorced and remarried woman. A little tough to read that text and think, wow, what kind of standard is that? How can I live with it? And that would be another really good sermon I could give it. And here's where I wound up as I struggled with all of this. I started thinking about paying attention to that last bit in the gospel reading where Jesus takes those children into his arms. And what he says is interesting. He says that the only way you get to God, the only way you get into the kingdom, the only way you get to wherever it is spiritually that you want to go is by dumping your pride and coming as a little child. When he says that, he doesn't mean you have to be cute, fortunately. Not all of us are. And he doesn't mean you have to be innocent. And he doesn't mean you have to be naive. What he's talking about is letting go of power and privilege and any sense of superiority to anybody else. It is a radical invitation to come to God the only way we can come to God. And that is in profound humility. And when we can do that, you see, the very obstacle to me coming to Jesus is my pride, right? It's my feeling all this judgment. Like, I want to be a really good person. Exactly not that. Not that. That's how you'll be after you come to Jesus. That's the only way you will even have a hope of growing towards that, is if you dump your sense of self-sufficiency or your sense of inadequacy. Either one. They are equally obstacles, because they are both rooted in the idea that we earn God's love. And Jesus blows that up and says, you'll never get here unless you dump your pride and your inadequacy and just be a child. And look what he does with the children then. He takes them in his arms. He gathers them up. He surrounds them with his love. What a beautiful image. How amazing. I've said it a million times because I never get over it. Desmond Tutu saying the most radical phrase we can proclaim is, Jesus loves me, this I know. That's the beginning of revolutions. That's the beginning of transformation. It's the beginning of everything, to come as a little child. And in such a way, we can come to Francis too. And in such a way, we can enjoy his company and hear what he has to teach us and receive his gifts of ridiculous, generous, overwhelming joy before all of God's creation, which he names his brothers and his sisters, not just the creatures, not just the cute puppies that we bless at animal blessings, but the stars and the water and the earth itself, herself. So to come to Jesus as a little child, I invite you, if you're willing, to do that in your imagination now. And you can close your eyes if you want. Just kind of look down, whatever works for you. But I invite you to take that moment to be with this loving one who knows you and receives you and is not particularly surprised by your inadequacies or offended by your pride, but wants to welcome you as you are. And out of that welcome, to give you what you need, to give you what you need, to begin to respond. And what might that look like in your life? Is there a child you need to embrace? Is there an other who frightens you like the leper? Or from whom you turn away with judgment? From that place of free, gracious love, can we imagine ourselves being peacemakers? Francis says, make me a channel of your peace. Which takes us back to the place we began this morning, remembering those shootings. We feel so powerless as individuals, but truly it is only individuals collectively who ever make any difference of any kind. Let us offer ourselves to be peacemakers, whatever that may mean in our lives. Amen.